So guest intros, Fiery Windmen. Very nice to meet you. It's my first time talking with you. Could you please share with the audience your history with the game?
Yeah, so like many of us, I started World of Warcraft when I was 12, 13, back during the day. I started actually a little bit before Burning Crusade came out. I specifically remember it was the NAX pre-launch event. So I played through Burning Crusade. I don't necessarily have a lot of memories from back in the day. I did raid, did some Black Temple, but most of my WoW experience came a lot better. Came a lot later during Legion, actually. I quit for 7 full years, and I went to other MMOs. I came back for Legion, got back into raiding there. I'd been raiding in other MMOs, and then I played Classic. And Classic is where I did a lot of my Warlock theory crafting. I, of course, played Warlock in retail as well during Legion, and I was theory crafting there as well. I theory crafted in other MMOs. Theory crafting is just kind of what I do. It's a strong passion of mine. And in Classic, and particularly TBC, there's just a lot of room for theory crafting. There's a lot of things that are still unexplored. TBC in particular is very ripe, and despite the fact that people have been playing this game for 12 years on private server, there's a lot that is still unexplored and not really promoted.
Right. I'm glad that's true. Right. A lot of us in the chat, we probably speculate that that's true because, when you look back at private servers, there's been a ton of vanilla private servers, and everything has been looked at for way longer. Like there's been some TBC private servers over the past, but I think a lot of us suspected, like, man, TBC could be this uncharted meta ripe for theorycraft and all that, and it's great to see that someone who lives the theorycraft stuff agrees with that. Folks out in the audience, it's rare you get these TCers, these theorycrafters on the mic like this. They love spreadsheets. They a lot of them, can cringe from time to time at some of the misinformation you see on YouTube and stuff like that. I probably, we're lucky to have him here, guys. So if you have any good questions for him, please tweet at us or keep them in the chat. This is our chance to get inside this dude's head. So
this is pretty. The TC that this guy brings is massive because that's what I lack in the math. The theory crafting, and there's a lot of warlocks that could be on this episode with me that I chose you for that reason because you're huge. Yeah. I learned shit from him, which is just fucking crazy, bro.
Yeah, I'm watching chat as well, so if people do have questions, then you can feel free to ask me there.
That's what's up. Also, I think you published a Destruction Warlock guide, was it today? We're trying to get that out to the people as well.
Yes. So it's an in-depth analysis and emphasis on the in-depth. It is not a short, or a hype watch necessarily. But if you were looking for an exhaustive analysis of Fire Destro versus Shadow Destro, and we're certainly going to cover, at least on a surface level, some of the differences later in this podcast, then I have started a YouTube channel where I am focusing on hard theorycraft, where I back it up with tons of research to make sure that you're getting the absolute most accurate information possible, as well as build my own custom spreadsheets with sims and all, so that you can input your own stats and you can kind of explore it at your own leisure and to customize it to yourself when you are actually get into TBC.
Just listen to the sound of that, guys. Custom spreadsheets, YouTube channel with all that information. Man, that's exciting. That's exciting. Crix, did you want to go through some of this guest intro stuff? You said you were going to ask him like favorite spell and things like that, just so the chat can get to know him a little bit better too. But
favorite spell. I actually haven't done any of this stuff. I'll do it a little bit, but I want to know what your favorite spell. I judge warlocks by what your favorite spell is.
My favorite spell is Death Coil.
I love you because that's mine, and I respect you for that. That's
the fact that it only DRs with itself, it's just absolutely troll.
And you use it all. You can use that all the time. PvE.
Yeah, it's good. It's good while leveling. I use it while farming. I use it while leveling. It's good in PvP. Hell, I use it in raids. At the end of a boss fight.
Yeah, all the time. I love it, man. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to know.
All right, I got a couple for him. What class fantasy resonates with you the most? I don't know if it's Warlock or not, or maybe you like Warlock for like a numbers type of thing.
So, what resonates with me most in TBC is actually Arcane Mage.
Okay.
I think that Arcane Mage is very interesting.
Get him off.
I'm a pretty you'll find that I'm a pretty omnivorous theory crafter. I'm a career warlock, so I'm never going to be playing anything other than warlock. But Arcane Mage has a lot that's very interesting about it, and certainly under the right conditions and given the right support, I mean, it pumps really fucking hard. You just can't necessarily run more than like one in a raid. It just requires too much support typically to run like a lot of them.
I think it'll be interesting with TBC Classic to see all these Arcane Mages, though. They got some TC going on over there with some crazy stuff. I'm excited to see it.
But what excites you about the Arcane Mage? I'm wondering.
So it's primarily its interaction with other classes. Most classes play kind of their own little game, not interacting necessarily with the rest of your raid a lot. But Arcane, there's a lot you can do to support Arcane Mages. One, having a Shadow Priest is just baseline. For anyone coming from Classic, Shadow Priest, sorry, I think, yes, it's not a meme. They now provide 5% of their DPS as mana, which is very, very significant. It gives you a lot of mana. This is very relevant for Arcane Mage, because given infinite mana, Arcane Mage would be the highest DPS class in the game, hands down.
Really?
Yes, for sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Because they
by
get
like
a new
country
spell.
mile, or is it? I mean,
Yes.
it's cool to know these things.
By a country mile, yes.
Awesome.
If they had infinite mana, they get a new spell, Arcane Blast, which every time you cast Arcane Blast, you get a stacking debuff. It reduces your cast time down to 1.5 seconds, and it increases the mana cost. It more than triples the mana cost, in fact. So it's very high DPS, but super mana consumption. I mean, we're talking like 700, 800 mana, depending on if you have like tier 4 2Ps and other things that increase the mana cost. Arcane Power increases the mana cost. It costs a huge amount of mana. So you have Shadow Priests, which you pretty much have to have in your group to play the spec. Draenei Priests get a new priest spell, which Prayer of Hope, I believe. I'd have to actually double check that. Symbol of Hope, I believe it's called.
It's like 1k mana.
It gives each member of your party 1k mana. So if there's any priests in your raid, as long as they're Draenei, which I hope they are, you can rotate them actually into the Arcane Mage group, have them pop their racial, and then you put them back wherever they were. You've got any Resto Shamans, they have a new totem called Mana Tide, which gives a very significant amount of mana to your entire party over 15 seconds or so. And it's a 3-minute, 5-minute cooldown. It's pretty strong, and you can rotate Resto Shamans into the group to drop Mana Tides and give the Arcane Mage more mana. So there's all of these little min-max things that you can do. There's other possibilities that can be explored, like there's weapon enchants that give your party mana when it procs. There's drums that give mana. There's a lot that you can explore to try to support the Arcane Mage as much as possible. And the more mana they get, the more damage they do. And we're certainly getting a bit off topic. This is a Warlock focus.
It's cool. It shows. I mean, it's like the infinite power feeding them this infinite power, and they truly become, mana being the power, and they truly become the most powerful.
So it interests me the extent to which you can support them and find these little min-max things that allow them to pump even harder.
Absolutely.
That's certainly not to say that I don't thoroughly enjoy Warlocks in the Burning Crusade, because I do. I'm going to admit I'm not a huge fan of Warlocks in Classic, as much as I really enjoy doing nothing but spamming Shadow Bolt. But the Warlocks in the Burning Crusade, I mean, it's a completely different game.
Very good. Well, if this is a taste of what is to come, guys, can we get some hype in the chat? This is already awesome. Let's ask you one final question, and we'll move through the cringe stuff. What is your favorite version or iteration of WoW, and why?
That's going to be the Burning Crusade. I have the fondest memories of it. Certainly some of it is nostalgia. Nostalgia is always a factor, but things like getting my first flying mount, entering Black Temple, it was the first MMO that I ever raided in. These are memories that are always going to be with me, for the rest of my gaming career. And I do think that even objectively, I think that they made just vast improvements over Classic. That I think it's one of the best expansions that has existed in WoW's career.
Certainly. All right, we're through it. Hope you guys have a little better, taste of my man Firewind's personality and big brain here. I'm excited to try to get into this. This is going to be an episode carried by mainly Crix and Fiery, because I'm just the resident low IQ take here. But what I will say is, if all of us in the chat look back and think back on Classic, right? Think of, what class did you guys roll in Classic, chat? Think about it. I went Warlock. It was my first time going Warlock. how many things would you have done differently if you could do it all over again? Like, probably so many. It's like with the leveling route, there's just a million things you wish you could have did, so many things you could have done better. And our hope is that by getting some warlocks that have like lived this and have gone through a whole life cycle on a TBC server, they can just give you the most sick tips and tricks to set you up for success so that you can feel super hype and empowered, moving into TBC. So I would encourage Crix and Fire to like think about it from that like standpoint, what we could tell new aspiring fledgling warlocks to get them in the right headspace so they understand how the class works. And anyway, I will shut up now, guys. Where do we want to start towards tackling?
Can lean towards our announcement too at the same time. But there's a lot of misinformation out there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information out there, good and bad, and that's what when a year ago when I decided to do this, I wanted to make sure people had the right information, and so does Fiery.
That is in fact. Yeah, that is in fact what inspired me, because as Kargas said, like theory crafters like myself aren't necessarily the ones coming out here and like becoming content creators and doing the podcast, but we have important information to share, and that's why I wanted to start my channel, was seeing all of the misinformation that exists in the TBC community. You have content creators, like I know Crix is a legit content creator, Kargaz is definitely a legit content creator, but you definitely have a lot of these other people out here. They're going for real bottom of the barrel type videos, very shallow, often incorrect information. And I want to make sure that warlocks going to the Burning Crusade understand that there's a lot more to this class than spamming Shadow Bolt.
What a badass motherfucker, guys! We're not going to be bottom of the barrel for once, yo. Big hype, guys. Anyway, so let's talk about class changes.
Well, before we begin,
oh yeah,
big news for the Warlock people, man.
Okay, talk to me.
Fire and I have decided to start the Warlock TBC Classic Discord server. So the past few days we've set it up, found the right staff, the right big brains to ensure that everybody has the right knowledge, and we have created it. And no one knows about this besides the staff in there, and we're going to link it now. It's in correlation with the Classic Warlock Discord as well. They're supporting it, and we want all the information that anybody can find and can be right in the right spots by the right people, man.
Hell yeah, that's exciting. So if anybody here playing Warlock, come TPC. Here it is. This is the hottest, freshest new Discord being started.
You guys are the first ones in there. You will see that. Make sure it goes to the select the role. Select that role. Affliction, Demo, Destro. Choose your class and get on it, man.
Alrighty. Yeah, well, let's keep plugging that throughout the stream. Try to get a little jolt of energy into it, man. Yo, congratulations starting the Discord. It's kind of, a thankless job at times, but excited for it. Anyway, so, I don't know, Crix, maybe you want to start us off here. Class changes affecting...
Oh, yeah.
How do Warlocks change moving from Classic into TB? So explain how you see Warlocks in Classic. Maybe we can do that to paint the Classic picture.
Well, the difficult thing with that is, quit Classic. I played a Warlock, yeah, but I quit in, BWL, middle of it. So I don't know I don't know at all if Warlocks pump in Nax. I don't know what they look like in AQ. I know what they do in TBC. Maybe Fiery knows more of how they do in Classic. I personally, from when I started out, from the little bit of Classic I played to what I play now in TBC is, yeah, if you're running DS Ruin in Classic and you're a Shadow Bolt spam, I have been that cookie cutter Shadow Bolt spam in TBC as well, and it just hits so much harder. And you're critting for 1 million. It's more comforting knowing, yeah, it's boring if you do choose the Shadow Bolt spec, but the difference is you're not on the bottom of the meters, you're at the top of them, and it's almost like a little mini game between watching your threat and chasing crit, please crit, please crit, please. You're yelling crit at the top of your lungs. It just is super exciting.
What do you think?
It's real people like big numbers. Certainly, DS Ruin, the generic Shadow Destro spec, is always going to see a lot of play. People know it from Classic. They're already going to be DS Ruin going in. If you go on a private server right now in preparation for TBC Classic, like Crix and I play both, we both play on private server, a vast majority of the Warlocks are going to be DS Ruin. I personally think that, and this is kind of a hot take, I think that in early TBC rating, Shadow Destro is clearly the worst spec of almost any of the specs that you have available to you.
Even including Affliction?
And it's spicy, and if you would have told me this a month ago, I would have slapped him. But listen to this man's brilliant.
Okay.
There are... So, some of the specs available to you. In Classic, certainly, all you have is DS Ruin. You technically have SM Ruin, but SM Ruin is basically identical. The fact that you can't cast Corruption, especially more recently in Classic, now that you've got like fire mages and those meme classes taking up debuff slots, there's almost no difference between like Warlock specs in Classic. But in TBC, you have Deep Demonology. For those not familiar, there are some talents added to the Deep Demonology tree. You have a talent that gives both you and your pet 5% crit. You have a talent that gives you Felguard. That is, in fact, your new 41-point talent for Demonology. And the Felguard is a very pumpered pet. It's tanky. It's hard to say whether the numbers are exactly Blizz-like, but they should be pretty accurate. In my current gear on Karazhan, the private server I play on, it has about 10k HP, 9300 armor, and it has 50% avoidance. Avoidance being new to TBC.
50% avoidance?
50%. 50.
50%
so it has
avoidance.
so it has a 50% chance to avoid any AoE damage that hits it.
Oh,
Hunter pets get the same thing. I believe it actually they may even get more than 50%. I'm not entirely positive there. But the Felguard is the only Warlock pet that gets that in the Burning Crusade. None of the other Warlock pets have that yet.
So avoidance is now like, when I think avoidance, I think dodge, parry, block, all these things. You're saying avoidance in TBC is like AoE reduction, right?
Well, you're correct for tanks still. That's certainly still true for tanks. But this is specifically, it's a passive skill, a passive ability called avoidance. And it gives you a certain percentage chance to avoid any AoE damage. In this case, it's 50% for the Felguard. So anytime an AoE hits it, 50% of the time, it takes 0 damage.
Okay. Gotcha.
So you have the Felguard pumps pretty hard. If you don't want the Felguard, because if you take the Felguard, you can't pick up Ruin. What you'll quickly find if you look at a TBC talent calculator is if you take a 41-point talent in one of the trees, you can only put 20 points in one of the other trees. So Ruin is a 21-point talent, Felguard is a 41-point talent, so you can't take both of those. And you classic Warlocks, you're definitely familiar with Ruin and how good Ruin is in general. The Felguard is extremely, extremely strong, so this build is still going to be very strong despite not having Ruin. But there is another alternative you can try, which is the 0-40-21 that uses the Succubus instead of the Felguard, and you pick up Ruin instead. It's higher personal DPS, so I could easily envision a Demonology Warlock through the life cycle of TBC going like Felguard early on, and then transitioning to Succubus as their gear gets better and better. The increase in personal DPS from that spec is going to be more and more noticeable, but the Succubus is not anywhere near as tanky as the Felguard. So in Classic, where we're going to have like, quite frankly, we're almost certainly going to have like fully nerfed bosses. Private servers tend to be overtuned with how much damage they do. It's going to be pretty survivable on a lot of fights, particularly if you have best friends with the Holy Priest. And I highly recommend making best friends with the Holy Priest if you're a Demo Warlock, so that they can babysit your pet a bit, give it powered shields, going to AoE, that kind of stuff. You can probably find that the Succubus is still usable on a lot of fights, despite not being necessarily the tankiest pet. You've got other things. You've got Affliction. You have 2 different Affliction builds. You have your new 41-point talent, which is Unstable Affliction. It's a new dot. Very strong in PvP as well. If it's despelled, it does a large amount of base damage, and then it has a 280% spell power coefficient, and it deals that damage to whoever dispelled it and silences them. So Affliction is pretty interesting in Arena and PvP in general. It's also just a really strong dot to use in Raid. Your other Affliction build takes Ruin instead of Unstable Affliction. That's typically for later levels of gearing, like high tier 5, getting to tier 6, that kind of thing. Eventually, Ruin just becomes better and better the more crit you get. For Destro, you're not even necessarily tied to just Shadow Bolt. Fire Warlock, yes, you heard me correctly. Fire Warlock is very much a thing. And I certainly attest that Fire Warlock is better than Shadow for not necessarily the entirety of TBC, but for a very significant portion of it. Tier 4, pre-raid tier 4, even tier 5, Firelock remains strong.
Yeah, we'll get into the
And
talents
that's
too,
actually
and compare like what the cookie cutter one is that everybody, when they think TBC Warlock, this is what spec they're thinking of, and just to give people a frame of reference as well. Just to take a few steps back here too. I mean, I'm going to say some very like low IQ take things here, just to kind of paint the picture, because some people might not know where Warlocks stand in TBC. In Classic, Warlocks are not incredible when it comes to AoE, right? When the mages are the kings of AoE in Classic.
Yeah.
For sure.
You can still, Hellfire, Oil of Immolation, do some stuff, but not the strongest on that front. Warlocks are taken in Classic, but there's usually just one if you're in like some semi-hardcore to hardcore type raid, just to throw up either Curse of Recklessness or the other curses up there. So you're like in a damage accelerator, and then they're a class that does a bit better moving into AQ and beyond. So they do appreciate kind of over time in Classic, but Warlocks aren't really at the tip top of the damage meters. And one of the things that holds them back is that there's 16 debuff slots in Classic, right? So you can't, oftentimes you're not authorized to throw up corruptions, and it can feel pretty bad. You're also just totally threat capped to a certain extent. Well, that's going to depend on what your play group is, but that's something to keep in mind. And I'm only saying this because in TBC, a lot of these things are no longer the case, right? Like, do you guys have any just like some broad strokes thoughts on how Warlocks are, how they perform differently in TBC?
For like in the raid situations, PvP obviously very different. The raid situation, it does look kind of the same because you're still shadow bolting, you still have shadow burn, you still death coil, you still life tap. You're still doing the same physically in the raid. You're pretty much doing the same thing if you're running, the Destro spec. And if affliction, you're kind of doing the same thing except for, you're pumping way harder as well, even if you choose to do that. So in the raiding environment, nothing has really changed that much.
Yeah,
like rotation wise.
Specifically for the standard Shadow Destro build.
Yeah, we're gonna pull up. Someone just asked to pull up. Talent tree we're going to a little bit.
Yeah,
I just want to go over some of the changes still.
Yeah, I'm thinking, just along the lines of you do have a threat dump now, right? With this
Yep, yeah. So Soul Shatter is an amazing thing. Everything within 50 yards. 40 yards. You have your threat with everything. 50% threat. It's the bread and butter of a warlock in a raid. You need that, or you're hampered. For some reason, the rare times that you ever just shatter indecently, because there's a certain way to shatter. You can't just shatter whenever you want. Because the earlier you shatter, the less threat you're losing when you do it. Versus if you have 40k and you shatter, you're losing half your threat. But if you shatter in the beginning, which you have to do sometimes, you're at 10k, you're only halving it.
Exactly.
But shatter is God mode. And it works everything. It's AOE. We see the corruption spam. If the pally tank pulls up and I'm spreading seeds and they all blow up, I could shatter that. That's amazing. That would be my second favorite spell. It's the reason you can pump that hard. Hands down, it's one of the best. It's one of the main reasons why you can pump so hard as a warlock. The
seed, yeah, and it's interesting with the seed because you're the king of AOE, in TBC to a certain extent. And again, feel free to jump in here, Fire, if I'm talking out my ass here. But my understanding of it at this point is that yes, hunters and warlocks are kind of neck and neck at the top of the damage meter. But that's when you're talking about like single target damage, like a boss fight type thing. If you're going to factor in just total raid damage done across the if you just look at the overall damage done at the end, on the meters or on the logs at the end of a raid, that warlocks are trashing the hunters. I mean, they just have way more overall raid damage if you're factoring in all the damage done to trash and stuff like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah. In a classic setting, I definitely think that will be true. On private servers, like on Karazhan, for example, for anyone that is not familiar with the Karazhan private server, or private servers in general, a lot of them have extra tuning to make it more difficult. In the case of Karazhan, everything hits 25% harder and does, it takes like 25% more damage in terms of, let me rephrase that. They have 25% more health. That makes a lot more sense. They have more health, more damage. That drastically alters the strats that you use when clearing raids. So you don't see necessarily a lot of like chain AoE pulling, for example. But in Classic, where you're not going to have the extra tuning, you're not going to... Private servers also tend to be pre-nerfed, like 2.0 gearing. You're going to have the best gear, you're going to have nerfs. I fully expect for AoEing down large packs of trash to be the meta in Classic, and certainly under those conditions, Warlocks trash most other classes. Mages are still competitive. You're still going to do basically the same thing they do now. You're going to drop the Flame Strike. You're going to spam Arcane Explosion. And they're pretty strong still. Purely in terms of AoE DPS, the Warlock is better. The advantage of Mage AoE is they get 40% threat reduction to their Arcane spells. So if you're threat capped, which you certainly can be in AoE scenarios, then they can start AoEing earlier, more aggressively. Which
once they get T5,
makes them pretty competitive.
Mages are actually the top AoE every 3 minutes with their cooldowns. No one can touch
it.
Yeah, once
it's you're popping. Yeah, so what Crix is referring to is that you're typically fire, either frost or fire, up until the time you get your tier 5 2-piece, which buffs Arcane Blast by 20%, which is the main spam spell. It's their version of Shadow Bolt. It's a very, very strong tier bonus for sure. At that point, you go Arcane, which means that they pick up Arcane Power. So every 3 minutes, you can pop Arcane Power and do 30% more AoE damage. And you also pick up Icy Veins, which is a new talent available to Frost that gives them 20% haste. So they're casting basically 20% faster.
Which is reducing that global cooldown on the Arcane, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Haste and haste effects in Burning Crusade reduce the global cooldown. So your global cooldowns are 20% faster. So even though Arcane Explosion does not have a cast time, it's still benefiting from the haste in the same way. You're getting, it doesn't technically work out to 20%. It's 15 to 20% more Arcane Explosions, basically. So certainly every 3 minutes, and it's also on a 3-minute cooldown. So every 3 minutes, you're going to pop Arcane Power, you're going to pop Icy Veins, and you're going to do really, really high DPS. Like certainly a mage under those conditions is the highest AoE DPS. So Warlocks are very, very good AoE. It's more so than like clearly outclassing the mages. I'd say it's more like we're equal with the mages. I'd say both classes probably share the crown of being kings at AoE.
Wow. See, you learn something new every day, chat. I mean,
mages are really good, man. They're something.
I thought
the big
TBC,
thing,
Seed, Warlock, untouchable, and now I'm learning that mages are actually right there up there with them. Sorry, Craig. So what were you saying?
Another huge. This is huge because a lot of the big con. If you talk to anybody about pro, a lot of people who actually have never played a Warlock, they'll tell you the reason why is because of soul shards. They don't want to shard farm. And one of the things that you waste all your soul shards are hellstones, and there's the soul well, where you just put a soul well down, and two people click it like you're summoning somebody, and it puts a little green soul on the ground, and it spits out 10 hellstones. So 10 people can click this hellstone. And get a hellstone instead of you having to significantly pass out 10 craft and pass out 10 hellstones, 20 hellstones. You know what I mean?
I mean that's
huge quality of life.
Huge. Well, it's not even quality of life. It's like it is life because I don't know. At least when you're raiding in Classic, it's such a pain in the ass to trade everyone hellstones that like 90% of the time you don't even do it, and people don't even bother. It's just too much of a pain. That like people just don't tap hellstones most of the time, right? Unless you're really on progression or something.
Tank.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice. And then another thing is you summon a lot of people, right? Well, now the summoning stones in TBC, you can summon from them. Saves your shards as well.
Yeah. Let's think along the lines of mechanics, too. Mechanics. Anything come to mind in terms of the Warlock now just functions differently comparatively to Classic?
Yeah, so it's actually building on top of what Chris just said. On the one hand, you can summon from summoning stones now, which is huge. Mm-hmm. But Warlock can also summon people into instances now. So gone are the days where people had to run to the dungeon and then zone in before they could be summoned. You just summon them from wherever you want and to wherever you want.
Oh, you can summon them to like the end boss of a heroic or something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That is nice.
So you don't have to wait 30 minutes for them to run to Dire Maul anymore. You just summon them directly. It's huge.
And it helps for the Tempest Keep dungeons. You have to have a flying mount to get there. You can have a Warlock summon up. So there's always going to be those guys who do, because when you're leveling in TBC, you will have enough. You should have just enough gold for your flying mount by the time you hit 68, 69, right? But some people won't because they're leveling up whatever during the time and being able to get summoned the Tempest Keep, where you have to do it in order to even get into Karazhan, right? The dungeons, Alcatraz. You just get summoned right on in there. Summon in the raid, summon yourself.
So the quality of life is a bit better on that front, right?
Way better.
In terms of hellstones, soul stones, about buffing, debuffing, anything like that on that front? Nothing.
One of the main, it really just frees up one lock. There's Curse of Shadows in Classic. Curse of Shadows doesn't exist anymore. It's baked into Curse of Elements. So normally you would have a Curse of Elements up, Wreck up, and Shadows, and then a free Hegan Agony or whatever. Now it looks like you have Shadows, you have Recklessness, and then every other Warlock is Dooming. Doom is the main one you do now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. There's an interesting discussion of Doom versus Agony in Classic in terms of which does more DPS, and it's pretty nuanced. I'm certainly not going to bore your audience by going into the details of that, but in TBC, it's just de facto Doom because the coefficient is increased from 100% to a whopping 200% spell power. So it gains 200% of all of your spell power.
And that's it still functions the same way, pops after a minute?
Exactly. Yep. It pops after a minute, it can still crit.
Dude, I use Doom, and again, I wasn't in the most hardcore raid ever, so like our fight times are a bit longer. But in Classic, I would throw up Doom on a target that I knew that was going to survive for a minute, right? I'd just throw it up on it, and then I would move on to something else because the damage to execution time was so efficient. I never knew if it was 100% more efficient, but I always thought it felt good, and it did pretty good. So
Doom's heavy. It messes. I mean, I would say a big change functionality wise with Warlocks is you really worry about threat now versus Classic. You know what I mean? You really, it's like that's all you're worried about. Pretty much the whole fight, I look at my Omen more than I look at anything else. And Doom can take that edge over because, all those bosses that you see threat resets on, if your Doom goes off right away, which happens, it happens to me on each boss at least once before I learn, like, I got to chill with that. You know what I mean? That'll rip aggro for you, and no one's ripping off.
Considered as really feels bad, man, right? Because people are worried about threat in Classic a lot of time playing Warlock, feeling like they're threat capped. Now we're in an environment with the threat dump, with the Soul Shatter, with Salvation on both sides, and all this factored in, and threat is still a huge factor, right? That's interesting to point out.
But at the same time, I've rated. We're going into Sunwell now. You as a Warlock, I'm in control of my threat. It's not the tank's fault. It's not. It's my fault. If I pull aggro, it's literally my fault. It's not. I mean, unless tank dies or you're second on threat, tank dies or something stupid. But it's me. It's on you as a Warlock to not pull threat, and it's really easy not to. It's just you got to hold that trigger finger sometimes. Sometimes you got to stop cancel your last one because your last one crit. It's a mini game. It's the fun part of being a Warlock is actually managing the threat.
And why do you say you can control it though? I mean, because in Classic, is it because you can crit back to back to back with Shadow Bolts and there's nothing you can do about it, and sometimes you have to just go.
Well, yeah. Well, in TBC, if you crit back to back to back, you just don't. You get to stop. Like you just know. Well, you have Shatter, right? But you don't want to Shatter too early because you're losing. You're gonna lose a lot of threat that you can actually potentially jump. Personally, me and I probably Fireworks, he runs Affliction, so he probably doesn't have a lot of threat issues. As a Destro Lock, and I'm just Shadow Bolting pretty much the whole time. You don't open with it. I'm opening with Curse and I Immolate. Maybe I'll put one Corruption up just for that little extra couple of seconds, but I'm still doing some kind of damage, and then I'll open up and pump.
Gotcha. Sorry, Fire. I think I cut you off there. My bad.
Yeah, it's no problem. So I think what Crix is trying to say in terms of the difference between the two is certainly in Classic you can control your own threat. You can stop DPS just like you can in Burning Crusade. But in Classic, a good tank should be able, certainly one that's getting all world buffs and using their consumes, should be able to output more threat than any other class can have in threat generation. Which is a big difference compared to the Burning Crusade, where Warlocks are just pumping so much harder, and tanks aren't necessarily pumping as hard. They lose a good chunk of their consumes. They lose world buffs. So threat is certainly a big concern in Burning Crusade.
Gotcha. Okay, maybe we can talk about pets for a little bit here too. So, like you mentioned before, we have the Felguard now, which I'm sure every one of these pets we could probably talk for 2 hours on about all the little nuances and implications. But just generally speaking, how do you see the role of each pet?
Imp. If you're Affliction, you usually run the Imp because you're in the tank group, right? You have the Imp. You haven't phase shifted, but there's ways to dance around it and make sure so he's not phase shifted. Because as Fire, I'll actually let you explain the Imp. Go ahead.
Yeah, so certainly on the private server, I do find myself in the tank group occasionally. In Classic, I don't think that that's going to be necessary very often because bosses aren't going to hit nearly as hard. Tanks are going to start probably gearing more for threat in general. Where I generally find myself as an Affliction Warlock, because I am an Affliction main, which is relatively rare on private server, is in the Mage and Shadow Priest group. A little context here for how we typically build our raid groups in private server. You have a tank group where you typically have some melee. You usually have an Enhancement Shaman. Enhancement Shamans are gods in TBC. They provide just so much utility and DPS to their party and to melee in general. You have a Warlock group, which is typically 3 Destro Warlocks, a Boomkin. They go from 3% AoE party-wide crit to 5%. And then you have an Elemental Shaman. You're going to have a Shaman in every party. This is a common theme. And the Elemental Shaman is providing Wrath of Air, which is giving each person in your party 101 spell power, or 121 if they have the tier 4 2-piece, which they often run as soon as they can get it. And they're also providing the Totem of Wrath, which is a new 41-point talent for Elemental Shamans. It gives you 3% spell hit and 3% spell crit.
You're telling me you get 8% crit from 2 of the people in your party?
Yeah, yes. So you get 3% from Totem of Wrath, and you get 5% from your Boomkin.
Yo.
So you get a whopping 8% crit from party auras. There's technically even other min-max you can do. There's jewel crafting necks, which are very interesting. One of them provides 2% crit to your entire party, 2% spell crit. We run it myself and our caster groups on the private server. There's another neck that provides party-wide spell power. These necks are very strong. If anyone wants to look them up in a so if anyone wants to look them up in a database, you've got Chain of the Twilight Owl and you have Eye of the Night are going to be the two main relevant jewel crafting necks. You don't need to be a jewel crafter to use them. There's certain restrictions in terms of duration, cooldown, but as long as you're not dying consistently, like wiping on trash and stuff, they're very, very strong to use. And certainly if you're parsing, you're going to be using these necks. So you get a huge amount of crit, 10% crit if you're using those necks. Even more, paladins gain a new talent, Judgment of the Crusader. When talented into in the ret tree, it's pretty early in the ret tree, you provide 3% crit to your entire raid when you have Judgment of the Crusader judged on a target. Jesus. So you're actually gaining, if you're using the jewel crafting neck as well, and you have the Ellie Shaman, the Boomkin, Judgment of the Crusader judged, you have 13% crit that you're actually gaining from raid buffs and raid debuffs.
That is absolutely bananas. And also in TBC, right? Isn't there a lot more itemization for like crit on items and stuff too? Like you have a lot more like flexibility because there's more gear you can choose from, right? Or no?
Yeah. Crit rating is kind of the last thing you go for, really. But yeah, you end up at the end of the day with a lot of crit on there.
Okay. Yeah, in pre-raid and like tier 4, you're not rocking necessarily huge crits amount. With all the raid buffs, you're usually going to get up to 28, 30, 32% crit. But once you start getting into tier 5, you start seeing these huge gains in crit. And particularly going into like tier 6, I mean, you're crit by, tier 5, tier 6, you're going to be rocking 38, 40, 42% crit after all of your raid buffs and debuffs.
Yep. That's true.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's circle back with the imp though. So imp tank group similar to how it is in classic.
Right. So I got a little sidetracked there. Yeah. So there's a second caster group which is going to be an arcane mage, usually only one. You can't have two here though. A shadow priest, and then typically the affliction warlock goes here as long as you're running 4 warlocks, which is pretty common because warlocks are quite strong. So as the affliction warlock, and then of course you have either an elemental shaman or a resto shaman in this group. The resto shaman does offer some unique things to the arcane mage in particular, because they have mana tide, which as I mentioned before it's a cooldown that they have that gives your party a bunch of mana. They have a better mana spring totem, which is the water totem they drop that just gives you constant taking MP5. So you sometimes see a resto shaman here. Yeah, they still have Wrath of Air. So it's not uncommon to see a Resto Shaman put in this group, and then you might have another healer. We often put our Paladin tank in this group when he needs mana. But the core is you have the Shadow Priest and the Mage, and then the Affliction Warlock if you have 4 Warlocks. And because I have the Shadow Priest, this actually affects your pets as well. This is very relevant for the Imp. On any fight where the Imp can survive, which is a surprising number of fights in tier 4 and tier 5, the Imp pumps super hard. I don't know how many of you guys have tried using your Imp to DPS in Classic, but even in Classic, the Imp pumps hard. Mm-hmm. Particularly when you're talenting into things like the reduced cast time for the Imp in the Destruction Tree, the improved Imp talent in Demonology.
The Black Book, baby.
Yeah, especially if you have the Black Book. The Black Book does get nerfed, unfortunately. It gives a flat amount of AP and a flat amount of spell power, but it's still really strong because it's basically a free buff. Just like in Classic, you'll pop it, you'll switch trinkets, your buff now has a free... Your pet now has a free 30-second buff at the start of a fight.
So you as an Affliction Warlock, you're using your Imp and Raid then?
Yes, I use it to actively attack in the Shadow Priest group. It has infinite mana, which is very nice. That's the main problem with using the Imp. Like the Imp would be used to parse in Classic right now if you had Shadow Priests giving it mana. Because the only problem with it does huge amounts of DPS. The only problem is it doesn't have any source of mana. So the Shadow Priest providing infinite mana means that it pumps super hard. Plus you have all these party auras. It gains the benefit of Wrath of Air. It gains the benefit of... It gains the benefit of all the buffs. Sure, You've got the jewel crafting next. If you're running those in your party as well, it gains the extra spell power, the extra crit. The party-wide auras really help it a lot.
Yo, that's sick. Okay, I see why you went into that now. So the imp gets the Boomkin aura. It gets the benefit from the Ret Paladin Judgment. It gets the benefit from the Wrath Totem. So it actually gets 13% crit on your imp and infinity mana on your imp. Yo, I'm kind of hyped right now.
That's why I let him talk about imps. This dude is a theory crafter, bro. It's crazy.
Yeah, if you're in the Boomkin group, then that is certainly true. Like if your guild's running 3 warlocks, even as affliction, you'll typically be in the Boomkin group anyways. So it gains a lot from the auras and the debuffs in general. And on a fight where it can survive, which I'll certainly preface this by saying that there's a lot of fights where it can't survive. But any fight where it can, and I'm finding an increasing number of ways to get it to survive fights on the private server, even with the increase to AoE damage. I even in tier 5 gear, I am equaling or sometimes even beating Destro Warlock straight up in single target DPS, just because the imp pumps that hard. So you definitely can't sleep on the imp, and especially if you're bribing a holy priest like I am to throw a power word shield on it every time like before an AoE comes out. It can survive quite a lot of AoE. Actually.
So if you're a Destro lock, you don't use your pet, right? Because you're demonic. You're sacrificing it. So if you like that playstyle, I think you might be inspiring a new generation of affliction warlocks here. Because I like using a pet personally. It kind of makes me.
The only thing that I think would be a little hesitant on is in T14. I don't know how it's going to go with. So in T6, you start getting all your haste gear, and haste doesn't affect dots. And I think that's when Destro is going to start pulling ahead way above affliction, is because you have so much, 200 plus haste on all your gear.
Right now, I would agree. I would agree with that. Especially for affliction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we should get into that later once we get into the specs and the talents. We'll compare like the pros and cons to each, right?
Yeah. Actually, I think now is a good time to mention something we haven't before, which is pets scale now in the Burning Crusade. That was a change we didn't mention. So pets actually gain attack power and they gain spell power based on your own spell power. They gain about 1.7 attack power, 1.75 attack power per spell power you have, and about, they gain a spell power every 6 to 6.5 spell power that you have. It makes a very significant difference in your pet damage. It's the same reason why Beast Mastery Hunters get so much stronger, why Hunters in general get so much stronger in TBC, because of their pet skill. It's actually the same for us with our Demonology specs, or doing something like using the imp to attack.
Dude, I feel like we're helping people out in a big way, because you always hear about pet scaling, and I think Hunters when I think pet scaling. I honestly thought that was a Hunter-only thing. Now, just to have the confirmation that the warlock pets scale in the same way,
Imagine any pet you have. So if you have a Felguard out, it transfers the spell power to attack power, right? So in an instance where I normally have 1200 spell power, right, T6, and then all my procs happen. Everything drops at the same time. All my procs I get lucky. My procs happen. I just gain 400 or 500 spell power, which means my pet just gained a dumpster load of attack power, spell power, and makes them dump even more.
Right. Yeah. You end up with a lot of items in the Burning Crusade compared to Classic that proc. That will give you large amounts of spell power, and your pet also gains a comparable attack power buff while that procs.
Okay, so if we had to put, again, this is going to be imperfect, but it's just kind of somewhat useful, even though it's imperfect. How would you rank the pets, real quick, in terms of damage output? Let's assume that you're spec'd properly for each pet. How would you rank them in terms of? Maybe Imp is the highest damage dealer. Maybe Succubus. I think people, even in Classic, have messed around with both, with Black Book, with Succubus and Imp. And what do you think in terms of...
Well, the thing is, we haven't messed around with Black Book that much because it's a Classic item. And nobody's really going back there to BWL to try to get it.
Yeah, I've been trying
to get in a raid scenario, at least.
Right. I've been trying to convince my guild to run Blackwing Lair for me so I can try to pick it up, but that's been a pretty hard sell. Luckily, my Classic character has it, and if none of you guys have Black Book yet, I highly recommend picking up Black Book. It is one of the few items from Classic that are going to it's going to remain relevant for basically all of Burning Crusade, as long as you have a pet and you're using it in any context, it just remains a good trinket.
That's what's up. I have it on my lock too. Yeah.
Both of them, Black Book and Nel's Tier, all come out of BWL. There's I would say two top things you want to get. Two of the top two things to get coming into TBC that you'll use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to answer the question of to rank the pets in damage, it's probably going to look something like Felguard, Imp, Succubus, and then technically Fell Hunter and then Voidwalker, but you don't really use those in raid.
I agree with you.
Wow, hold up. Holy shit. So we're talking about 13, you're saying even with a 13% crit on the imp and like the mana battery, the Felguard would pump harder than it possibly if you went like...
Well, your Felguard's still critting too.
Yeah, so I mean, it pumps pretty hard. It gains a stacking buff that increases its own AP by 5%. It stacks 10 times, so it gains plus 50% attack power. So it scales very well, actually. It has a 6-second cleave, and technically on like maybe on a pure single target fight, maybe the imp actually pulls ahead. Mm-hmm. This is still an area that I'm still theory crafting, and I still have to verify that a lot of these numbers are Blizz-like, but they're going to be pretty close, certainly. Maybe on pure single target, the imp actually pulls ahead of even the Felguard, but the Felguard wouldn't be far behind, certainly. And it also technically depends on what things you're running in your raid. Like, are you running a survival hunter? For anyone that doesn't know, survival hunters gain access to the exposed weakness debuff, which is every time they crit, they give the raid basically 25% of their agility as attack power, which in the Burning Crusade is typically 250, 300, 350 attack power, depending on exactly how much agility they have. And this affects your pet as well. This is going to affect your Succubus. This is going to affect your Felguard. Then you have things like Annihilator. Yes, Annihilator. This is a classic item that we'll see use in TBC. Actually, it's actually going to see more use in TBC Classic than it does right now in Classic, which is to say, it doesn't really see use at all in Classic right now. That's largely a function of the fact that bosses have relatively little armor, and if you're running an improved exposed armor rogue in Classic, which is very common in the more parse, speedrunning heavy guilds, bosses already have basically zero armor. But bosses do have more armor in the Burning Crusade. It's designed that way so that armor penetration is relevant. That comes about in like tier 6 gearing. So the Annihilators is going to see use. It would see use in Classic right now, as long as the armor reduction was relevant. But fights are also shorter. Fights are going to be longer in TBC Classic compared to now because you don't have world buffs and all that. It actually becomes a one-hander weapon as well in 2.4. I'm sure Crix and many of us are working under the assumption that we'll have the 2.4.3, which was the final TBC patch version of all the items. So I would expect Annihilator to be a one-hander from the start. So what you typically do on private server is you actually have your enhancement shaman run Annihilator in their offhand. There's not a huge distinction between main hand and offhand for an enhancement shaman. Their instant cast ability, Storm Strike, instantly attacks with both of their weapons, including their offhand. They can do that every 10 seconds. They gain an attack speed buff every time they crit, just like warriors do. It's actually an identical talent. It's Flurry, basically. And they have Wind Fury on both of their weapons, whereas other classes could only have Wind Fury on their main hand, so they get Wind Fury on their offhand. And their Wind Fury is buffed. Whenever their Wind Fury procs, they get 2 extra attacks instead of 1. So I find that Enhancement Shaman with the Annihilator in their offhand is actually able to maintain 100% uptime, 100% uptime on the Annihilator debuff, and they're not really sacrificing a lot of their personal DPS to do so. So Annihilator is very, very efficient to run.
Yeah, we'll have D6 right now.
Yeah, we'll have to test it certainly in Classic to make sure there's nothing weird going on with its proc rate compared to private server. But as long as it's not drastically different, I expect that to be the meta still, is running the Annihilator in your offhand on the Enhancement Shaman. Maybe you have 2 Enhancement Shamans, depending on how many melee groups you're running, and maybe they both run it. It's just one of the things we'll have to see. But I'm sure that Annihilator will see use.
Okay.
If you've got Annihilator in your raid, that's relevant to your Succubus and your Felguard damage, because that's decreasing the boss's armor by another 600.
I think with regard to our whole pet discussion, for me as a low IQ warlock looking at you guys and listening to this, Imp does way more damage than I thought it would deal, and I didn't think of any of those implications with Shadow Priest, which is really cool. And some people who might be completely lost with warlocks to see where Felguards, how much damage they do, it seems like they do a lot of damage if they could even outdo a Succubus, and a lot of people consider Succubus doing a ton of damage in Classic. That's kind of the drain tanking meta and stuff, so it's good to know just
the thing with Imp too, I don't know if you mentioned it, was we have T4 you have a Fire Mage, T6 you have a Fire Mage, which will buff the Imp's damage as well, improve score.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So let's move
Voidwalker,
into...
raid-wise, I use it one time on ROS and Black Temple. I sack that phase 2 for the regen. But other than that, Voidwalker doesn't get any use.
Gotcha. let's move into specs, and then we'll go into talents. So we've been kind of talking about this stuff. There's just so much to get through, right? It's so tough to even tackle it because there's just a million things you can talk about it, But if you could try to be general and broad with stuff, let's try to go over the 3 specs from a rating setup environment. Affliction versus demonology versus destruction. Yeah, we can bring up the talent. You want to bring up the calculator right now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's start with the most cookie cutter setup for rating that everybody thinks of, the baseline, the standard
Affliction. Yeah, it'd be a UA build.
for rating.
UA. Well, Affliction is the main 2 that people go to is like it's a UA build, and they kind of when they get a little more crit, they drop UA and they go and get. So it'd be like pretty much SM run. Another thing, if you can look, so you have Affliction on the left, right, obviously. If you look where Siphon Life is, right, and right under it, there's Shadow Mastery. And then under that is Contagion. And then you have Improved Corruption up top, middle, right? You know what I mean? You have so much other thing that buff your dots for Affliction. So your dots actually do hit way harder.
Okay. Well, let's take me through. Maybe together you guys can
he's the Affliction God. Go ahead, bud.
So we can go from the top here. So the start of the tree is pretty much identical. The very first tree here, you're gonna put the 5 points in Improved Corruption. That's gonna be
real quick though. Do you agree that Affliction is the because my perspective, I feel like it's some kind of destruction. Like it's either
for what?
Like just this
Abyss.
No, like the when I think of just the standard rating build for Warlock, I think it's a DS Ruin kind of build. DS.
Well, in Classic, if you're SM Ruin, you're only SM Ruin, so you can put Corruption up and get that Nightfall proc and everything like that. So, but it's different. In TBC, you have all your dots up. Your MLA, Siphon Life, if you want, UAs, everything. So it's
we can discuss the DS Ruin build first, certainly, if you want, and kind of compare it, because I'm sure it's the build that most of your audience is familiar with. It's what you're playing in Classic, almost certainly.
Yeah, before we get into the big brain stuff, let's do that one first. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, we can knock that out real quick. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward here. You're going to put some points into Improved Health Zone at the start, just like you do in Classic. You can take different ranks, and you can provide more than one health zone to your party members. That's going to be into the Demonology tree. Yeah, so 2 is default, but you typically have a Warlock that has 1 and then a Warlock that has 0, and that allows you to provide 3 different health zones through your entire raid. Okay. You're going to put points in. I actually forget the name of the talent. To the right of the Embrace. Just go to the right here.
Demonic Embrace, yeah.
Yeah. So you're always going to put 5 points in Demonic Embrace. Gives you a lot of stamina here, 15%. The Spirit Reduction isn't relevant. Yeah, put all 5 points in it.
Oh, 5 points. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So this talent gets reworked here. It's the 1 right below Demonic Embrace.
Bell Intellect increases your intellect of your imp. Yep.
Yeah, so it increases your pet's mana just like it does in Classic, but now it actually increases your intellect by 3%. This says increases your maximum mana by 3%, but I actually think that's incorrect. So one thing I should preface with a lot of these online talent calculators, if you're just looking up TBC, talent calculator, is a lot of these are actually very inaccurate. You go over to Ember Storm in the Destruction tree. It's right below Ruin. Just hover over that for the audience real quick.
Okay. It's a little bit of delay probably on the stream, but yeah, it's there.
Yeah, I'm watching the stream so I can see when it pops up. So Ember Storm here. So this is actually accurate. It increases the fire damage done by 10%. It also reduces the cast time of Incinerate by 10%. But what you'll often find, if you just look up random talent calculators online, is it's not at all uncommon for the Ember Storm talent here to not include the Incinerate reduction. That's because this is a 2.4... It was a 2.4 change made to the talent tree, and even though these talent calculators all advertise their 2.4.3, which is, again, the final patch of Burning Crusade, for some reason, a lot of them don't include that. There's other errors across multiple different classes, so just a little word of caution, you can't necessarily treat a lot of these talent calculators like they're just 100% accurate. Just a little bit of an aside here.
So,
So going to the demon
intellect, this should be intellect, increases your intellect by 3% instead of maximum mana.
I'd have to double check. I could have sworn it
No,
was. I could have
it's,
sworn
max,
it was
it's,
intellect.
it's maximum mana.
Is it maximum mana?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, yeah. So it increases your maximum
I'm in game
mana
just to check for you too. I'm actually in
okay,
game.
yeah. So I did misremember that. Apologies to the audience. So it does increase your maximum mana by 3%, but that's a new change from Classic. It did not increase your stats at all in Classic, so it now increases your maximum mana by 3%. You're always going to pick that up because there's not really a lot else you're doing with the points here. They're pretty much just filler. So going down, you're always going to put a point in Fell Domination. You're going to put 3 points in your talent that increases your armor, which is primarily for your Fell armor.
This is new, huh?
Yes. So it's a new talent, and Fell armor is a new armor. For anyone that is not familiar with Fell armor, it's a new. I keep saying new armor. I'm getting repetitive at this point. It increases the amount of spell power you have by 100, and also increases the effect of life gains from Siphon Life and Drain Life by 20%. So it's really big. You're never going to use Demon Armor again, basically, as soon as you get Fell Armor.
Ever.
I can't say I've never, ever used it, but it's been like ridiculously niche situations.
Yeah, I've been looking for reasons to use it, man. I was thinking maybe arena, double melee.
Yeah. I've been thinking the same thing too, but usually Fell Armor just like straight up wins. It's a huge boost to your spell power. This gives you 30%.
Power, though.
Yeah, so this gives you 30 more spell power, and it increases the effect of the extra life gain. So you're gaining even more life from your Siphon Life, from your Drain Life. Very good in PvP. Very good in PvP. Very, very good in both PvE and PvP.
20% more healing you gain from outside sources of healing.
Not including regular heals, but specifically things like Siphon Life and Drain Life and all that. So you're going to put 3 points in Fell Stamina.
Okay.
Again, this is just like the Fell Intellect talent. In addition to increasing your pet's health, which isn't relevant to you much as Destra, it increases your maximum health by 3%. So these points would otherwise be filler. You're just increasing your health. You're going to put 2 points in Master Summoner. These talents, Fell Dom and Master Summoner, do just the exact same thing they do in Classic. You're going to put 5 points in Unholy Power. Again, does the same thing that it does in Classic right now. Increases the melee damage done. Actually, the Imp Fireball, I'm pretty positive is a new change. I don't think Unholy Power increases the Fireball damage degree.
20%.
It is.
I'm even double checking Classic tactic because I haven't logged in Classic in like a couple months. Yeah, it is. So in Classic, the Unholy Power talent increases your Voidwalker, Succubus, and Fell Hunter melee damage by 20%. So it's been changed to include the Imp. It increases the Imp's fireball damage by 20%.
Imp cannon build, you would go Demonology Destruction to get this, and then some of like Imp Firebolt and Destruction.
Yeah, when you take this build, you're not usually.
That ability isn't ready yet.
What brings you here? Goddess.
ready yet. Not enough energy. I can't do that yet. I don't have enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. Not ready yet. I can't do that yet. I don't have enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. Not ready yet. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy.
Usually going to use the imp, you're usually going to use the succubus of the Felguard, but there are certainly some situations where I still use the imp, and that's because of the Master Demonologist talent, which we're about to get to. It also increases your Felguard's damage by 20%. That's just adding the new pet in. So you take a Demonic Sacrifice, of course, and then you put 5 points in the Master Demonologist. This does the same thing as it does in Classic, with the addition of the Felguard. The Felguard is a mixture of the Succubus and the Fell Hunter for the purposes of the buff that it gives here. So the Succubus, when you have the Succubus out, increases your damage by 10%. I'm sorry, we're getting into a Demonology build here. Apologies, I got sidetracked going into a Demonology.
Yeah, we're just going over the tree, right? So we're only going down to
Yeah.
Demonic Sacrifice, then we're going into Destruction, right? Okay.
Basically, yeah. We'll cover Demonology like in just a little bit. So
wait,
let's actually take the
let me
points.
back up to where? When we back up to Fell Domination?
Just end a dim sack.
Yeah. Into Imsac, take 4 points out of the Unholy Power talent.
Okay. So Master Summoner, then Fish, Demonic Aegis.
Yes. And
1
then
point
Fell
on Unholy,
Stamina.
and then Demonic Sacrifice. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so the 1 point Unholy Power, that can go literally anywhere. It's just 100%. That's filler point at that point. And then you put the point in Demonic Sacrifice. Of course, that's the point of going down the tree. It does the same thing it does in Classic, nothing new there. So Demonology is also going to look similar at the start here. You're going to put 5 points in Emperor Shadowbolt, does exactly the same thing. 5 points in Bane, does exactly the same thing, reduces your Shadowbolt and Immolate cast time.
TDC, unfortunately. You'd think they might want to rework this because it's kind of an underwhelming talent, right? But
What?
Cataclysm?
yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It is underwhelming just because of its interaction with
Of your mana? Okay, so I think it's fine on a private server where it's really overtuned and the fights are long as shit. But on a short fights, the mana's not going to be that big of an issue, yeah. But, I mean, a couple less Shadow Bolts from it in an overtuned server is nice. But I don't server.
Yeah, so I can actually cover Cataclysm a bit here if you want, Chris, in terms of like the math and why I think Cataclysm is bad.
That's all you
I wouldn't even. I think Cataclysm is just like bad, actually.
Yeah. And,
that's because of how.
It's the same, though, right? It's
you usually put points in it so you can drop further down on the tree. There's not a lot of other places you can put the points for the tree. That's the only reason I think a lot of people take it too.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. There are other places certainly you can put the points there, and we're going to get into that in just a second. But for Cataclysm, how Cataclysm interacts with Warlocks because of Life Tap, which is a unique feature of the Warlock, you can't look at it as, okay, I'm doing, my Shadow Bolts cost 5% less. That means I can cast an extra Shadow Bolt every 20 casts. 5 times 20 being 100%. You save the amount of mana that a Shadow Bolt costs. It's true that you save the amount of mana that a Shadow Bolt costs, but that's not giving you an extra 2.5 seconds of DPS. Because you have Life Tap. Life Tap is giving you a lot of mana for a single global cooldown. It's a base of 560. It's 500 something. And you have an 80% spell power coefficient on it. So you're looking at, you have 1,000, 1,200, 1,400 spell power depending on your gear level. The Life Tap is easily giving you 1,300, 1,400, 1,600 mana. So the amount of mana that you have to save in order to gain 1 global cooldown's worth of time is the same amount of mana that a life tap gives. So if a life tap is giving you, say, 1600 mana, then you have to cast a number of Shadow Bolts. So you take the Shadow Bolt mana cost, and then you divide it by 1600. I'd have to look up the Shadow Bolt mana cost. I actually don't know it offhand. I feel ashamed here.
Oh, good, man. We forgive you, man. Not knowing the exact mana cost of Shadow Bolt, man.
I would put I think just to make it go. Otherwise, we're gonna waste a lot of time on things. Fill this out as we normally would, and then we'll switch it to what your thing is. Right? You know what I mean? Look at the chat and just copy that exact thing down, and then we'll switch everything what he's talking about as we go, so you can fill the build in all the way. Put 5 into there. Devastation.
Okay.
Drop down the ruin.
Destructive Reach, right?
Yep, 2 destructive freeze. Drop down the ruin, and then
Can't get Ruin yet. We're still missing a couple. They have those flex points, the same ones you have in Classic, right? So you can go Searing Pain or something.
Go up to Cataclysm.
Oh, so you put them in Cataclysm? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a normal build, and then we'll shape around it what he's talking about, so you can see. So I'm going to explain why this is this is the typical build on the private servers, and he'll explain why, and he's right about his as well. Yeah.
Okay.
5 in Immolate, yeah. Improve Immolate, 5 into it.
Emberstorm?
Improve Immolate.
Yeah, I got that one. Yeah, Nether Protection or Emberstorm.
Backlash. It should be, you'll put 1 into whatever the fuck that's called up there just to open up the slot. Aftermath.
You should have 5 in Cataclysm here as well.
5 in Cataclysm, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, for the kind of the more standard build, certainly.
So we're not getting Conflag though, right?
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, no, wait. Yeah, we're gonna explain it. He'll explain that. Yeah,
Okay,
but I'm showing you the normal one. So for right now, take it away. Go right next to it and take 3 into Backlash.
Mm-hmm.
And what's left? How many points are left? I can't see. It should be 1 in Aftermath. I think that's
You
it.
should have 2 in. You should have 2 in Intensity is usually taken.
Intensity, gotcha.
Yeah, so Intensity was changed in Burning Crusade. It only affects Hellfire and Rain of Fire pushback chance in Classic, but it affects all of your destruction spells now. So anytime you take damage, anytime AoE goes out, if you're casting Shadow Bolt, if you're casting Immolate, you now have a 70% chance to avoid that spell
good.
pushback.
Wow, okay. Wait,
Yeah,
if you had a Paladin with Concentration Aura, 100%?
Yes, it does stack that way. So
Yo,
it would be 100%.
That's so sick, actually. Okay, so you never get pushback resistance just from little chip damage.
It helps a lot on fights, yeah. I mean, you're almost never going to have the Paladin with the Concentration Aura, but
in your group, right?
Even 70%, even 70% is a lot, though. It prevents a lot of that spell pushback. So when you have a lot of AoE going out, it's a huge DPS increase.
Okay, we got 5 points left.
Yeah, then Shadow and Flame, the bread and butter of your Destro build here. A new TBC talent, which increases the... Go ahead, Quakes.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I say Shadow and Flame increases the spell power coefficient of your spell power, of your Shadow Bolt rather, and Incinerate by 20%. So for Shadow Bolt, it's 85.7% normally. It's 105.7% now. And then for Incinerate, 71 point something, I believe, is the coefficient, and it goes up to like 90, maybe it's 75, it goes up to 91, 95, something in there, but I don't recall the Incinerate offhand. This is a huge increase to the amount of damage that your Shadow Bolt and your Incinerate is doing, though. Incinerate being a new spell, I should mention, it was added with TBC. It's basically the fire version of Shadow Bolt. It does extra damage.
Because that's one of the things missing, and Classic people would say, like, Destro doesn't have its own Shadow Bolt type thing. The closest thing they have is Immolate spam, right? Or Searing. We could do spam Searing Pain too, but it's got a threat modifier to it, so you're gonna pull.
Yeah. So for like a straight, so if you're Destro, there's Shadow Destro or Fire Destro, and they'll both have their own nuances, and there's pros and cons to each of them, right? This build that you have, the point you have in Ember Store is kind of flex. There's 2 builds that you could use on private servers. The other one is more survivability, which you are probably not going to need at all. You would just put 3 in the Nether Protection above Backlash, and then in Soul Leech, but I don't think that's going to have to be used in TBC Classic because it's going to be much more simpler. And even on Karazhan, I run this build because it's more damage.
This is Fire Destro?
Yeah. No, this is Shadow Destro.
Shadow Destro, sorry. Okay, so this is right out of the box, cookie cutter, Shadow Destro build, right?
This is pretty much the most damage you can get from Shadow Destro, cookie cutter spec. You can get more if you put more in Everstone. Pretty much this is the build. You can flex some points in or out different spots like he was mentioning. The way he's looking at it is have how Classic simple, which is so smart. That's why he's doing it, you know? Mm-hmm. This will be the cookie cutter. You can do private server cookie cutter is more survivability, but you don't need it.
Yeah. So what I play on private server and what I suspect is going to be just the highest DPS version of this on Classic, you pull the points out of Cataclysm and you put them in Ember Storm instead. You should be casting Immolate. Immolate is going to be a DPS increase for Shadow Desher. Interestingly, even if you don't have a Fire Mage providing improved Scorch, which is a significant loss, as long as you've
I think
got...
it depends on your gear, because I simmed it once, I didn't have Fire Mage and it wasn't coming up.
So I actually have a spreadsheet built that I can give to you after this podcast, Craig's, or if anybody wants to check out my Fire versus Shadow video, I have a spreadsheet that I cover.
Not ready yet. Not enough energy. I can't do that yet. I don't have enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. Not ready yet. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. Too far away. I don't have enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. I'm out of range. I don't have enough energy.
listening? Ishnu Dal Dieb. Be careful.
Ishnu Allah. Good luck, friend.
can't do that yet. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. I can't do that yet. Not ready yet. Too far away. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I can't do that yet. Not ready yet. I don't have enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. I can't do that yet. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not ready yet. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. I don't have enough energy. I don't have a target. I can't do that yet. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. Not ready yet. I don't have enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. Not ready yet. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I can't do that yet. That ability isn't ready yet. Not ready yet. That ability isn't ready yet. I don't have enough energy. I can't do that yet. ready yet. Not enough energy. I need to get closer. I'm out of range. That ability isn't ready yet. Too far away. I can't do that yet. I need to get closer. Too far away. Not ready yet. That ability isn't ready yet. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I can't do that yet. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not ready yet. Not enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. I don't have enough energy. I can't do that yet. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I'm out of range. I don't have enough energy. That ability isn't ready yet. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. I need to get closer. Too far away. can't do that yet. Not enough energy. Not ready yet. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I can't do that yet. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I don't have enough energy. Not enough energy. I need to get closer. I don't have enough energy. Not ready yet. I need a target.
Who wished to speak?